Hi everyone, this is your host Sajed from English Learning Made Easy podcast. And today our topic for discussion is understanding behavior in the context of education. And to discuss this topic at length, we are honored to have among us a great personality who is an expert in what drives special education, the Individualized Education Program IEP. She is a published author and an excellent speaker. She is a certified special education teacher and has been a special educator for over 30 years. She completed the Master IEP Coach mentorship and is a member of the Master IEP Coach Network. She has worked in the United States and England. During her career, she developed her own behavior modification system that worked with hundreds of students. She authored the book Those Who Can't Teach, which is about individuals and families who were told you can't, but who actually busted through those attempted limitations. Dear audience, please welcome Ma'am Shelley Kenow from St. Louis, United States of America. I warmly welcome you, ma'am, on our show.
Thank you very much for having me back.
And let me introduce to our audience, ma'am Shelley Kenow has already appeared in our first show. And because of the overwhelming response from the audience, she has decided and agreed with me to have a series of videos for you. And people have given so many lovely make opinions and the comments on that, and actually because of that we both have decided to start this new series. So let's begin with understanding behavior. So ma'am, my first question to you is how behavior works. And
Yes,
yes,
go ahead. How it works and what was the second part?
yes ma'am. Okay, can you give us a brief overview of what behavior means in the context of education?
Yes, absolutely. When I think about behavior, it's anything. It's the emotional part of it, it's the physical part of it, it's the verbal part of it. But oftentimes when a teacher or an educator hears the word behavior, or even someone in the general public, they think about more of the verbal and the physical part of things, the actual unwanted behaviors. But truly, behaviors are either wanted or unwanted, and they're developed from a myriad of information and experiences that each person goes through on a daily basis. I recently found a study that said that in today's society, each person, and it didn't specify age, so I'm going to presume that that means from little to old age, we process 74 gigabytes of information every single day. 500 years ago, a person who was very well educated would not have processed that same amount of information for an entire year. So our brains have to figure out very quickly and constantly what to do with all of that information. And all of that information is what I believe drives all of our different behaviors, whether that's at home or in school.
Wow. Miss, actually, our brain works like a computer, Miss, multitasking together.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely. And every bit of that information that our brain receives, our brain has to figure out what to do with it. And most of the information our brain decides to completely disregard. And so the information that it keeps then, it categorizes, like you said, as sort of like a filing system or a computer,
yeah.
in that it says, oh, okay, this experience I'm gonna put in this file. And then at some point in the day or the further time, if another experience similar to that happens, then the brain puts that in that same file. And depending on so many different factors will depend on how that bit of information will present itself in our behavior, whether we're happy, whether we're sad, whether we're angry, and then how we react to that physically, to that emotion or to that behavior feeling.
Yeah, my next question was just about to come for that. The emotions, do you feel the emotions have the greater impact on our behavior? A person who is sad will react in a different way as comparable to the person who is happy in the same circumstance.
Believe so, yes, because our brain is functioning different depending on which emotion seems to be the overriding emotion at the time.
Okay. So here behavior means it's very we can say the tender thing. We have to be very careful while dealing with any issue in our life, like how to react, how to behave.
Yes.
My next question is, why is understanding behavior crucial for educators, especially students' behavior?
Because our students are also processing those 74 gigabytes of information, the same as we are, but their information is different and their brains aren't developed to the same state that the adult is in the classroom that is teaching. And our brains have figured out different pathways, different files to put these things through, different ways to, we've had enough experiences in many ways to understand and process those bits of information in a more efficient manner, a more healthy manner. And we can understand some of the things that are happening to us better than our students can because of where their brain development is. And so being able to understand, okay, this student isn't even ready to learn today because they're something has happened that is distracting them or drawing their attention or feeding into their emotional well-being. And the way the brain works, my understanding of it, I'm not a neuroscientist or neurologist or anything, but my understanding is that in the back of our head is where our emotions are. And in the front is where we process information. And we have our verbal information processing here as well. So what we're able to speak out, what we're able to produce. And if our emotions back here are in a state of anything other than pretty calm and pretty regulated, it makes it difficult for the information to get here and then to go out again. And so when we think about those emotions, if we're happy or if we're comfortable or if we feel safe, we tend to be more calm and more relaxed. And so the pathway is clearer.
Okay.
But if we're upset about something, if we're struggling with focus or attention, or if we are dealing with a death or a big emotional event, we've had an argument with someone, or we're worried about something, then our emotions are not as calm and there's little roadblocks almost that are put up. And so when that information, some of that information can't, it's so upset, it can't even get past that to even begin to process it properly. And then some of the information that does come in past that isn't able to get back out again to express what we've learned or express how we're feeling.
Same like when the weather is very much cloudy, we can't see the sun.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's there
Yeah.
and it's giving off the heat. It's doing something, but
Yes.
it's not at its best.
Yes. It's not visible. It is hidden behind this cloud.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. My next question is, what are the common behavioral changes that a student face in the classroom?
Many times students come from very disorganized and chaotic homes. And then when they get into school, they're supposed to sit, be still, listen, focus, be quiet, do their work without much input as far as encouragement to continue going with that work. And many students aren't having that at home. And so especially our first time students, whether that's a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, it really takes a lot of just teaching them how to be a student, how to apply themselves, what sort of position might be best for their body, what sort of, how do you pay attention? What do you do? Do you look at the speaker? Do you look away? Do you look down? And some of that is cultural as well. And so also the teacher needing to understand that if they're in an environment where they have multiple different cultures represented, some eye contact is important in some cultures and it's disrespectful in other cultures. Some students, because of a disability that they might have, autism is one that comes to mind, that eye contact isn't always something that someone with autism is able to do, but that doesn't say that every autistic person isn't going to make eye contact. And so understanding all of those sorts of things even before the child walks into the classroom. And not that you need to know every family's lifestyle,
Mhm.
but just understanding that some kids kind of naturally tend to be able to sit, tend to be able to learn, tend to be able to be the kind of student that every teacher wants. And then other students are you're going to have to take more time to teach them how to be the student. And then as you get into the older ages, once you've gotten past teaching someone how to be a student, then again, understanding maybe that what's going on in that home life or in society. The pandemic has made a lot of students that are now going into like 10 and 11-year-olds be very fearful of a lot of different things because none of us had control during the pandemic, but children even had a less feeling of control because everything seemed to constantly be changing as far as expectations. And so having them now have this fear of, is that ever going to happen again? Am I ever going to get stuck at home? Maybe they had a family member who died during that time and they're worried about that anytime they get a sickness or a friend or a family member gets a sickness. And just kind of having those things in the back of our heads of there's a reason
Yeah.
behind the behavior. Behavior is a communication. What is that behavior communicating? Not that children shouldn't have consequences for those unwanted behaviors, but also understanding, I feel, why a person is behaving the way they're behaving helps our own mental health because we can choose to be angry and blame the student and blame the household and blame the societal situation. Or we can say, there's something that this child is going through,
Yeah.
and I choose to see that child in that situation and want to help versus wanting to blame.
Yes, of course. And pandemic has actually given the traumatic situation in every society
Yes,
where people is still, I think most of them are in their mental attitude has been affected to a greatest extent.
absolutely.
Most of them are
Yes,
still feeling the pains of the losing of their near and dear ones during that time. So definitely it
yes.
is going to have a great impact on their life. Okay, I have a next question for you that how do these challenges impact their learning and social interactions of behavioral challenges for the student? How do these how do these challenges actually have the impact on their social interactions or
Yes, it's a
on their learning? Yeah,
yes, it's a great question. Humans tended to be social creatures.
yeah,
However, in the last, well, 5 years because of the pandemic, but even 10 or more years because of just the social media presence, the digital presence, that our students are spending so much time isolated, but on their phone or on their electronic device interacting. And I say that with quotation marks because it's not talking, interacting. They call it talking, but it's typing, it's sending emojis, it's, sending a quick picture, whatever format that the person is using to interact with their friends. And we are finding as educators that our students are almost unable to have person to person conversations now. And I just read an article recently, giving oral presentations solely in a class, that the anxiety behind that is so intense now that some students are choosing to take a lower grade because they just have such a fear of speaking in front of other people by themselves. And we need to try to find ways to help that. Not that everybody is going to be a public speaker, but it's not the part of being the public speaker, but understanding that we have a fear and we have to figure out how to deal with that fear, and we have to figure out how to persevere even when life is challenging. And so, again, understanding what's happening in society and understanding what might be going on in that person's life, and teach. We may have to teach social skills where before we didn't have to teach those social skills. As far as them being prepared for learning, safety is a big need that everyone has. And because of school shootings, because of war, because of um, poverty, the pandemic, a lot of our students don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And when they don't feel safe, again, that's an emotion. So it puts up a bit of a barrier in their ability to learn. And trying to put things in place, having conversations with the students to help them express themselves that they are fearful if that is what's going on. And they may not say, I'm scared. You may have to sort of read between the lines
Yeah.
and catch what they're not saying in what they are saying
Yes.
to see this child is fearful of this or that, or that it scares them what's going on, and try to help them understand that in that moment in your classroom, they are safe and that there are things in place to keep them safe, even if something else, were attempted, and to help them regulate their emotion of, okay, I have this safety feeling, I can learn a little bit better now.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Actually, today itself in the morning, I have taught one poem in our school. The title was about the communication. Communication written
Mhm.
by Aisha Shirazi. If it's available, you should read that very nice poem. She has mentioned the same point what you said. After the pandemic, the children have got very much involved in games and other things. So she said the people also are using a lot of computers, laptops, and internet, so many things, and we have avoided talking face to face to each other. We are like
Yes.
emojis, you said, the text messages. Though those messages
Hmm.
do not convey the emotions exactly as a person face to face can talk. When you have a
Yes, exactly.
voice talk, then it has a different impact. And when you just sending the messages, okay, the message will get conveyed, but the emotion will be lacking somewhere. So definitely
Hmm.
we are in the phase of our world where the emotions are not being cared very much. I don't know
Yes.
what might be the reason, but people are just lacking the emotions. They are getting very, should I say this word or not, like selfish type of generations, and what we can say, people who are uh, caring for themselves very much as comparable to others' life.
Yes, I think that for my role as a special education teacher, I would teach about empathy. And for those students who were struggling with understanding the social cues and being able to put themselves in other people's shoes, but I think truly empathy needs to be taught to everyone, all
Yeah.
of our students, all of our children, whether they would be eligible for special education under a social emotional learning disability or not, because exactly what you just mentioned, that we don't interact with people
Yes.
like we used to. We are still sort of social creatures, but not to the extent that we used to be.
I
I
remember
guess it's still to the extent, but maybe not in the same way.
I remember my in my childhood. Still, I remember the people had a lot of time. There were no Androids, there were no mobiles, no telephones, and my grandmother used to say these stories. I still remember because there was a huge, very long day, and now today the days are passing like minutes, hours.
Yes.
So, because we have busied ourselves so much in those unnecessary things that the life is going just like this. Okay,
Yes.
what are some of the key factors that influence student behavior both inside and outside the classroom? I want your opinion about this. This is very important for me as a teacher to know, like those factors which affect the student behavior so that I can control them more easily in the classroom. If I know that these are the factors, this influence them, and because of that, they are distracted from their studies.
Yes. So as I mentioned, one of them is safety. If the student doesn't feel safe, if the student has a chaotic home life,
Yeah.
that will affect their behavior at school. If they have a disability of some sort, that may
Mhm.
affect their ability to understand the behavior rules that you set up. One thing that isn't a factor that affects just students, but one that happens to all of us, and we don't take the time to really think about this or to teach this, is our true expectations for the wanted behaviors. So truly understanding when many teachers have in many classrooms across the world will have the rule of be respectful,
Yeah.
be kind. Well, what does that look like? What does that mean to you as the individual teacher in that setting? We think those things are universal or common sense, but they're not universal.
Yeah.
And while they may be common sense, my common sense and your common sense, depending on, where you're from, because you're a man, I'm a woman, and I'm from where I am from, um, our common sense, again, the common sense isn't
Yeah.
universal. And so understanding exactly what we want from our students, we need to describe that to them, and we need to model that to them. And we need to do that regularly. Just like you will teach any sort of academic skill, you also need to teach behavioral skills.
Yeah.
And
Very,
you need
very
to teach
important.
them
Absolutely. Very.
frequently, yes. And you need to remind them. I did a sort of a impromptu study one time of speed limit signs between my house and a grocery store. And there were 17 different speed limit signs within an 8-mile distance. And the reason there were so many was because the expectation kept changing. I was in a school zone and there were more reminders to go slow because it was so important
Yeah.
to keep my focus on going slow during the school zone area.
Yeah.
But then when I was on the highway, there were less speed limit signs because I didn't need to constantly be reminded, because it is just it's just okay. You're out on the open road.
Yeah.
There's less dangers, there's less distractions. And then I got into another school zone area. And so there were more speed limit signs. And so that's another thing that we need to do when the expectation is going to change, is give a pre-warning that the expectation is changing. If it's a real important behavior that we are looking for, remind the student frequently of this is the expectation. And then if the expectation is going to change again because now the environment has changed, you're not in your classroom, but you're in an auditorium or you're out on a playground, the expectations for behaviors are different in different places. And so making sure that we tell our students exactly what we expect from them. And this applies to our children too. If you're at home, how your children behave there may be very different than how you want them to behave at the grocery store or in church or at your grandfather's house. And so making sure that every time you go, you give them a simple, quick reminder of these are the behaviors that I want. And you say the behaviors that you want instead of the behaviors that you don't want.
Yeah.
So that's probably more of a factor in getting the behaviors that we want than any other outside sources. But again, going back to those outside sources, it's being fed.
Yeah.
If a child is hungry, their behavior might be different. As you mentioned before, if they're sad versus happy, their behaviors could be different. The safety, the physiological, there's really, it's hard for me to give you main ones because there are so many, but those would be the ones I think I would focus on.
Okay. Yes, very true. Now, my next question is about the behavioral assessment. There are a lot of schools who are going with where the teachers are going to conduct some types of assessment for the children to know their behavior. So here, especially about functional behavior assessment, how it is conducted, I would like to know, like in different school, FBA, functional behavior assessment.
Yes. So in my experience here in the United States, and I don't know how it's done or if it's even done anywhere else, is we would do a lot of behavior rating scales. And what that entails is a lot of questions. And there's usually a number system or a, almost always or all the way to almost never, or always never, just some sort of a range of, and then you answer each question within that range. And several of the questions will repeat themselves, but repeat it differently and that's kind of the way to verify that, oh yeah, you're answering these questions similarly rather than I'm going to try to game the system kind of and, answer, oh, this is what the system wants me to answer. So I'm going to answer this way. So you'll have those sort of behavior rating scales, or you'll have observations from people who are trained in behavior therapy or behavior analysis, and they will watch kind of what happens before a particular behavior, the behavior itself, and then what happens after the behavior. There are, I don't know that there's an actual like test that you can give to a student that they're going to answer particular questions and then it's going to give you like oh, this child has this behavior and this is how you fix it.
Yeah.
Or change it. So it is a lot of subjective looking at data and saying, okay, well, there's a certain time of the day, or there's a certain day of the week, or there's a certain subject, or there's when this child is around certain children. And so compiling all of that and then determining what is the reason for the behavior itself, and then what has been the consequence. So we call that antecedent, behavior, and consequent, or ABC. And figuring out what is, and then you want to figure out the function. What is the reason behind? And if you talk with a board certified behavior analyst, a BCBA, they tend to look at 4 functions, and those are a need to escape, oh my gosh, a need for tangibles, a sensory need, or a skill deficit. And so once that level is figured out, I still continue to ask the question, why? If it's a skill deficit, okay, we know, well, there's a skill deficit, so we can help by reinforcing a skill that they're missing or reteaching that skill. If it's a need for a tangible, well, why do they have that need for that tangible? And you keep asking the why question until you get to the point where you can actually address the issue and not the symptom. I think that oftentimes when we stop at, oh, well, it's attention seeking, but why is it attention seeking?
Yeah. This is a very
Because if you
common
just,
problem. Sorry to interrupt
yeah,
you. This is a very,
That's
very
okay.
common problem. There are some children who are so actually means they do something just to gain the attention from the class, even though they are getting very notorious among others. Even they know they are getting humiliated. Sometimes the teacher will be just very strict with them, but still they have the hobby of getting attention. Don't know what.
Yes, and when they're wanting attention, usually a person, a child especially, doesn't care if it's positive or negative attention.
Yes.
But again, that's a symptom. Why are they seeking attention? Are they seeking attention because maybe they don't have the skill? And so they're seeking attention because they want to draw attention to themselves as a misbehaving student or the class clown, rather than I need to ask for help. I don't want I don't want my peers to think I'm dumb. I'd rather that they, think I'm the class clown, or I'm a bad kid because I'm misbehaving. And so that's why they're doing the attention seeking. Are they not getting positive attention? Do they not feel loved somewhere else? And so how do we then, in order to help that behavior, give them that positive attention at a time when it's appropriate and in a way when it's appropriate? How do we teach them if they need to, if they're needing a skill, how do they get that attention to help them with that skill other than misbehaving? So that's that. What are the other layers below attention seeking?
Yes.
Or what are the other layers below seeking, sensory seeking, or needing tangibles? How do we provide those things so that they don't have to have a behavior that we don't want? So you have to keep doing that surgery, I guess, to figure it out so you can address the base issue and not just put a Band-Aid on the symptom.
Yeah, I would like to just put the last question. We are just about to have our time. And this very important question for me. What are some effective behavior management strategies that teacher can use in the classroom? Like, especially, it would be just like a very good source in the hand of a teacher if a teacher knows how to handle even the naughtiest child of the class who generally have some issues, deliberately create some situation where the class gets distracted from the studies. So how
Yeah,
to
and
manage?
unfortunately, this is an area where I'm not going to be able to give you a do this and then everything will be beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
In
It's a
working with
general opinion.
behaviors,
Yeah,
yeah, well, and also it's not just one fix. It's something that is going to take time, because you'll need to, if this is a student that is continually disrupting the class,
yeah,
you'll need to take that data. You'll need to find out the why behind the communication, and you'll need to address that. And as you're going through all of that, you still need to be holding the student accountable for their behaviors, but having a relationship with that student. And by that, I don't mean that you're going to the restaurants with them, or you're going to all their school events, or you're, at their house for dinner. I mean that you actually know about the student's family and they understand that you see them as a person, not as just a body in your classroom, that you understand that they have a name, they have a family, they have a life outside of the time that they're in your classroom, that you are talking to them about alternatives to the unwanted behaviors, seeking out that, is it a skill deficit? How can we help this? Teaching them how to ask for help in an appropriate manner when they need that. There's something that happens frequently, and it's called planned ignoring. If you have a student who is been a well-behaved student, but this particular day they're having some issues. Planned ignoring is like, what they're doing, that they're staying safe, but you're not giving them that negative attention in the moment.
yeah.
But you kind of ignore it and allow it to kind of settle down on its own. And then you go talk to the student afterward when there's a time when you can take a break. Try not to disrupt the class even further by admonishing the student in front of
Yes.
everybody else.
Yes.
If you can talk to the student individually, allowing the student to take a break
Yeah.
from the situation. But they always have to come back and complete the work. Never allow them to completely get out of doing the work. Giving them choices of, well, you have the option, you can complete the work now with your classmates, or when your classmates are doing this fun activity, or when they go to PE, or they go to recess, or they go whatever, you can complete it then. Sense of control is a huge factor in children's misbehavior,
Yeah.
because as I said, children tend not to have much control anyway. But since the pandemic and during the pandemic, they had even less. So if we can give them control of just simple things like, do you want to use this pencil or this pen, this writing utensil or this writing utensil? Do you want to tell me the answers orally, or do you want to write the answers down on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard or a chalkboard, or record your answers into a recorder of some kind? I think so often we get away from the fact that we're there to teach the children, so therefore we want the children to learn, and we get stuck in, well, they have to do it this way, because if they don't do it the way I've told them to do it, then I'm going to look weak as the teacher. And you've got to remember that our behaviors are also communicating things.
Yeah.
What are our behaviors communicating? And so allowing people to do it differently is accepting them for who they are in that particular moment. So I can't give you just like one thing to
Yeah.
take care of all behaviors, because there's so many different reasons for
Yeah.
behaviors,
But
and each of those reasons.
still you have given a very vivid idea about this. It's a very good
Okay,
answer
good.
that has already cleared
Thanks.
my confusion. So
Good.
thank you so much for your precious time, your effort, and the knowledge what you are sharing on our channel. And definitely we will have further lot of series, and we will see how beneficial it could be to our viewers, to our students. And I hope, and actually I look forward long term working with you, and on so many topics, because I'm also feeling confused, like on which topic I should ask you. So we will have to stop here. Yes, we'll have to stop here now as the time doesn't permit. So we'll meet soon with our next
Okay.
video. And till then, please take care. Bye-bye.
Yes, you too.
And
Bye-bye.
God bless us all. Thank you so much once again for your precious time. Bye-bye.
Very welcome. Bye-bye.